It's been heavily requested for quite some time now. I've had it in streams and videos. People just asking for some more Supercross tips. My Supercross season so far this year has gone exceedingly well, much better than I ever expected. It seems like people just really want some more tips on how they can get better at Supercross, how their races can go better. So this video is purely 5 areas that I think people can improve on just to make their Supercross races go much better, much smoother. You know, cut your lap times down, get better finishes. We'll kind of go into them in more detail one by one, but the 5 things in general are starts, first and foremost. I think they're the easiest thing to practice. Your whoop technique, your seat bouncing, your soaking / scrubbing of jumps, and then finally your racecraft as well. I say it time and time again, starts are one of, if not the most important parts of racing in this game, both motocross and supercross, although especially supercross in my opinion. Every time a new track has been released this year, even in the we maybe get 10 minutes or so of practice before we go into qualifying, I will take 2 minutes just to do a handful of practice starts. And ideally what I'm trying to look for and work out before going into the heats and the mains and such is what gate I want, what gear I need to be in, how far I need to lean forwards, and then as well, how late can I leave the braking and still make turn 1 no problem. So taking Glendale, for example, this year, it was a Triple Crown event. I won all 3 of the mains, so back to back to back, and guess what? I got all 3 hole shots. Technically, it was 4 hole shots, as one of the races got red flagged and had to be redone, but 4 out of 4 hole shots in the night, to me, is perfect. You know, it's exactly what you want to be looking for. On a 450, I found the technique that works best for me really is choose the gate with the straightest line to the bows on the inside of turn 1. So sometimes this is gate 1, however sometimes you'll find maybe gate 4 or 5 or so to be the most straight shot to the corner. Reason being really is on a Supercross start, it tends to kind of get narrower from both sides. So if you do start on gate 1, say the left-hander is first up, you'll probably find yourself turning right before you can turn left. So move a couple of gates along, get that straight shot, you're covering the least amount of distance, and in turn you should hopefully get there first. I'm usually about 3rd gear on the stock 450 Husqvarna gearing, and that seems to be the sweet spot for me. The reason for this is the 450 will pull in 3rd gear, no problem at all. You know, you haven't got to waste any valuable milliseconds shifting up along the start straight. Leaning will really depend on your camera angle and FOV. For my personal settings, I find that leaning forwards to the point where the handlebars meet the bottom of my screen to be the perfect amount to keep my front wheel light without looping out. However, this is the one thing that will depend on your settings, so you do need to experiment with that. And then finally, on your practice starts, work out a reference point of how late you can leave the brakes, whether it be a certain bale or maybe there's a certain decal on the floor that you can see, just so you can brake as hard as you need to without blowing turn 1, taking everyone like on the outside of you out, as you're not going to make many friends that way. But those 4 things are what I look for when I'm doing starts. They've helped me so much this year. I've got so many hole shots, so just sit down and practice them is all I can advise. Next up, we have got the technique in the whoops. So we've got the easiest one out of the way. I think the starts are the easiest one to work on. Now, I think the whoops are the hardest thing to work on and the hardest obstacle in Supercross in general. They come in all shapes and sizes, especially this year with the track variation and the whoop variation. However, there's one technique that I find greatly reduces the amount of times I will crash or get super sketchy through the whoops. When you're hitting the whoops, first and foremost, you want your front wheel to be touching the top of every single one. As soon as it dips too low or skips out of the whoop completely, that's when you're going to be praying that Poboso is on your side for the day and that you survive. Normally, you'd think it's okay to just stand up and lean back from the get-go and you'll be absolutely fine. Unfortunately, it's not always the case. The impact of the first whoop really, it does hit quite hard in this game, and with how fast people try and go, it can instantly cause you to skip a whoop or drop the front end and end up on the ground. What I like to do, which is something that I found works very consistently for me as well, is as I'm going over the entry whoop, that whoop that's smaller than all the others, is I will briefly sit down and lean forwards to soak it up as much as I can. This kind of gives me a lower trajectory across the whoops and keeps my momentum from keeps it going forwards rather than kicking me up in the air. As soon as my front wheel is over that entry whoop, I will then stand back up, and that's the point I'll get my ass off the back of the bike. I find that if you soak up that first one like this, it does a much better job of just getting my bike and on top of them rather than into them, and it helps me skim across the rest of them no problem. That second whoop is by far the most important one, so if you can get your front wheel to hit the top of that second whoop nicely, then the rest of the whoop section will be much easier for you. Take some time to practice the whoops because each section is different. Some tracks you want to hug one side and the other, some tracks you might need to move from maybe far left to far right by the end if they're rutty, so you can miss the higher points. The technique will remain exactly the same in regards to sitting down and scrubbing off the first one. However, you still do need to find the line that works best for you on each track as well. If you're playing 2022 Anaheim free, however, do yourself a favour, just jump through them. You'll save yourself a lot of stress and a lot of time resetting the bike as well. Third up on the list, we have got seat bouncing. Now, this is something that I do get asked about a lot, and I regret to inform you, there is no proper preload / seat bounce system in this game in the way that you would normally expect. There are, however, a few ways that you can move your body about in the air just to get the most distance to try and keep your bike up in the air as long as possible, or maybe you like dip the front end down so your back wheel doesn't catch the landing, and hopefully get you those extra few inches that you need to clean your downside to trip out the corner. We all know that every inch matters. We're all guys here for the most part. As I'm coming up to the jump in question, I will actually be standing up rather than sitting down like you'd expect. And when I'm at the base of the jump, I'll lean all the way back, and then at the point that my back wheel leaves the ground, so the front wheel would have already left the ground, but the point your back wheel leaves the ground is when I want to lean all the way forwards. And I stay leant forwards until I reach kind of the arc of the jump. So when you reach the highest point in the air before your bike starts coming back down to land is when my momentum will shift from leaning forwards to being central on the bike. So I won't lean back, I'll just let go of leaning forwards, so I move back into the middle of the bike. And at the same time that this happens, there's kind of a chain of events that you need to link together. So you need to stop leaning forwards. At the same time, you also need to grab the back brake and sit down. So that's 3 things you need to do at the same time. Release, lean forwards, grab the back brake, sit down all at the same time. What this will do is drop your front end as much as it can do. However, it will also bring the bike up into you where you sit down, and that in turn will give you that little bit of extra distance that you need. Just to reiterate the technique, stand up, coming up to the jump, lean back on the face of the jump. Once your back wheel is leaving the ground, lean all the way forwards. Once you reach that midpoint in the air, let go of lean forwards, grab the back brake and sit down all simultaneously to dip that front end and bring the bike up into you. Once you've done this technique correctly, it will give you the absolute most distance that the game will allow. The rest is up to you in terms of getting the correct speed that you need to clear the jump as well. But if you want to practice this, I would say practice it on jumps that you can clear normally, just to get the timing down. And something that will also help is, even if you play in first person, try practicing it in third person as well, because then you get an idea of how the bike's moving in the air, and then once you've got the muscle memory down, you can just go back to your normal first person and you should have no problem with it. Now we have got soaking / scrubbing up jumps in general. So unless it's a Supercross triple, it's very rare that you'll be properly scrubbing hard in Supercross. What you will be doing, however, is trying to stay as low as you can through the rhythms, but still clearing like the big lines, and this is vital in shaving off those vital temps to get ahead of the competition, especially in qualifying, for example. Once you've got your rhythm sections down and you're consistently clearing the jumps without any hassle, you can start working on staying as low as you can while still clearing them. Now, the premise behind this is very simple. It just takes a little bit of timing to get down properly. So to start off with the easier version, all you want to do is be stood up, going up the face of the jump, then just as your front wheel's about to leave the ground, sit down and lean forwards. Stay on the throttle, or you will go over the handlebars. This, however, will keep you lower than normal and save some decent time over the course of an entire lap. It can be half a second to a second, for example. You can go and test that yourself. If you want to then progress that a bit further, and stay even lower, then at the same time as you go to sit down and lean forwards at the top of jump, just try turning ever so slightly. Now, that's not rider lean, that is just turning of the handlebars, and whilst it's not a full-on scrub, it will turn you ever so slightly and keep you lower than just sitting down and leaning forwards by itself. It'll keep your momentum going forwards, it'll make you land sooner so you can get on the throttle sooner again, and the difference between using this technique and by not doing anything, just standing up and hitting the jump in a dead straight line, it is very noticeable. I'd go as far to say that it is worth well over a second a lap when you do it correctly. Last on the list, we have got Racecraft. Now, I think everybody has room to be able to race smarter. You know, some people get all caught up in the moment and hyped up and try and go as fast as they can everywhere. Not really the best case scenario in Supercross. It's just a recipe for disaster. So, I think Racecraft has been a standout factor in my own racing this year, and I've just been trying to ride as smart as possible, even if I don't get the best start. There is absolutely no reason why you need to try and run qualifying lap times every single lap of a race and just put down heater after heater, because it will end up in mistakes. There's also no reason to try and pass people the second you get behind them. You know, you can wait a couple turns, just try and wait for a mistake or just a cleaner opportunity to make a pass. There's a lot more time than you realise in a Supercross race, and the chances are very high that everybody in the lobby is going to make a few mistakes throughout the course of a race. It all begins off the start. If you haven't got the jump that you expected, don't force the issue and try and just jam up the inside of everybody. Check up a little bit, wait for it to clear a little bit more, and try and hug the inside and sneak past everyone that pushes wide. And most of the time you'll find if you just brake, let everyone go and hug up the inside, you'll come out top 5 anyway, which is much better than getting taken out in the rest of the chaos. Next up, the first 3 or 4 laps are so vital to minimise the mistakes. You need to try your very, very hardest to not go down. And even if this means that you need to check up and double a rhythm that you'd usually triple if you aren't 100% sure you'll clear it, it's so much better to lose half a second by not hitting the big line in the first few laps than it is to lose 5 seconds from a crash and then get caught up in even more chaos with everybody. Once the first few laps drama gets out of the way and everyone's spread out a little bit more, you've still got another 10 to 15 minutes to put in a solid race. Even if you're a bit faster than the guy in front of you and you come up behind people, you do not need to pass them the same corner that you catch them. Chances are that if you sit behind them for a lap or two, the pressure of you being behind them itself will be enough to push them into a mistake. Then you just get to pass them as normal and get to reap the rewards and gain another position. Do not try making a move before a difficult rhythm section or a whoop section. Chances are that you'll end up messing up your normal entry to the section and not be able to hit the same rhythm or get sketchy in the whoops and just lose a whole lot more time, then have to do all that work again to try and catch back up to them. So just try and be a bit smarter with picking and choosing your moments, and then once you've kind of got some clear track around you, you can just focus on getting into a flow, putting in some solid laps, and just bring it home really, hopefully in a better place than you usually would. If I had to order those in order of importance that you should start working on, I would say starts are the most important, then your whoops, then your racecraft, then your seat bouncing, and then your soaking and scrubbing of the jumps. Work on those 5 in that order and you'll see results much quicker than you probably are now. I hope you found something useful in this video. Please do let me know down below if you found this video helpful, and apologies that it's taken me so long to make it. I hope it's been good for you. If you did like the video, please do drop a like. I'd really, really appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new as well, and have a lovely rest of the day wherever it is that you're up to. Till I catch you in the next video. Peace.
I'm working hard, I'm sacrificing my life, I'm sacrificing my mind, I'm sacrificing my sanity, but most importantly, I'm sacrificing my time. Boy, I feel fine, I feel like I am a king. Honestly, I can't complain, even with faith that's the size of a grain of some salt, I will still move a mountain and do what I want. I got so to be for my